18th century monarch commissioned this fresco, celebrating Spain's rise to power. It shows Christopher Columbus presenting the world to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Thanks to Columbus, conquistadors had a new world to conquer and treasure to send back to Spain by the galleon load. Much of it to gild the ceilings of the palace. Historian Marcos Martinon Torres specializes in this era of the Spanish Empire.
One of the aspects I've been researching is the material reason behind the splendor and the power of Spain.
Marcos believes that Spain's wealth did not derive from silver or gold, but a third element, hidden in plain sight, in this room. What it is and how it shaped Spain's destiny is a museum secret. To begin, we journey with Marcos to the Spanish town of Almaden and head for the bottom of a mine shaft. Far underground, Marcos walks the tunnels dug hundreds of years ago. But back then, the miners weren't looking for silver or gold.
So this is what the miners were after. This is cinnabar. This red rock that we see here running in a vein. Only here would you get such high amounts of this precious red stone. It was crushed to create bright red pigments. Some of those frescoes we've seen at the Palacio Real are actually made with this pigment. And that's one of the reasons that made cinnabar so special, so appealing to different cultures throughout time.
Cinnabar's brilliant color isn't what shaped Spain's destiny. Instead, 16th century Spaniards looked beyond the mineral's appearance.
Somehow they figured out that by heating the cinnabar, they could evaporate the sulfur. They would be left behind with tiny droplets of what we now know was mercury, this fascinating liquid metal.
Fascinating, but also potentially deadly. That's because mercury gives off toxic vapor, which would attack the nervous system of those working in the mine.
We now can explain it in scientific terms, but also in the 16th century, people would see that people would go mad and die after working with mercury.
16th century alchemists believed the risk was worth it. Some thought mercury was the fabled philosopher's stone that could turn lead into gold. Others discovered the element's real magic. Mercury can free precious metals from low-grade ore, and that would become the lucrative solution to a problem.
During the first few centuries of Spanish expansion into America, it seemed relatively easy to just go there and exploit the richest gold and silver ores. But very soon after the Spanish started exploiting that, they found that the richest veins, the richest ores, had been exhausted. So they had poorer veins that required more labor to extract a smaller amount of silver.
In today's Bolivia, which was back then a Spanish colony, there is a mountain of low-grade silver ore. Here, Spanish engineers sped up the alchemical process. While indigenous people were forced to work in the mines bringing silver ore to the surface, mules trudged in circles on a stone patio to mix seawater, silver ore, and mercury.
It was through this trampling that the mercury would eventually amalgamate with the silver so that it would finally leave the silver behind for you to collect.
Getting a single ounce of silver required 2 ounces of deadly mercury from a mine like Almaden.
1/3 of all the mercury ever produced across the world came from this mine. There was a massive logistical enterprise to send these massive amounts of mercury to America.
Increasing mercury production came at a tragic cost to the miners.
Tremors, severe pains, loads of people are reported as going insane. And of course, many of them as well would die prematurely.
In the Americas, the problem was even more devastating.
The Patio process was particularly toxic because you generated a lot of vapor and a lot of mercury compounds.
Historians estimate that over several centuries, 8 million miners died to produce precious metals, which would have a value today of $30 trillion.
Without the mercury, we wouldn't have had the gold and silver that made us rich back then. It's very difficult to overestimate the importance of mercury to the history of Spain.
The element that shapes Spain's destiny is hidden in plain sight in the Palacio Real's Hall of Mirrors.
If you wanted to make a mirror until almost the 20th century, you needed transparent glass and then a reflective backing, which was made of mercury combined with tin in an amalgam. So when I look at this mirror and see my face, I'm seeing myself, of course, but I'm also seeing mercury.
The Palacio's famous Hall of Mirrors is a glory to behold. But we can't forget its creation came at the high cost of human lives. Next on